Emergency at Camp Pendleton. Multiple Humvees down in hostile territory. The radio crackled with desperation across the Marine Base Communications Center. 3 armored vehicles had broken down simultaneously during a critical supply convoy. Mission near the Syrian border, leaving 18 Marines stranded in enemy territory with no backup transportation and enemy forces closing in fast. The motor pool was in chaos. Every available mechanic was either deployed overseas on medical leave or dealing with other critical repairs that couldn't be abandoned. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Master Sergeant Rodriguez slammed his fist on the dispatch desk, his voice cutting through the panicked radio chatter. I need someone who can get those Humvees operational in under 2 hours, or we're looking at a potential hostage situation. The mechanics around him exchanged helpless glances. Senior mechanics Thompson and Williams were shoulder-deep in engine repairs on 2 other critical vehicles that the base commander had personally prioritized. Corporal Martinez was dealing with a complete transmission failure on an armored personnel carrier that was supposed to deploy the next morning. Everyone else was either too inexperienced for this level of emergency repair or simply not qualified to work on the advanced hybrid engine systems that powered the newer Humvee variants. That's when Sofia stepped forward from the back corner of the motor pool, setting down her wrench and wiping her oil-stained hands on her coveralls. She had been quietly working on a routine oil change, invisible as always, just another face in the crowded garage. But now, with calm determination in her voice, she spoke words that would change everything. "Sergeant, I can get those vehicles running." Every head in the garage turned toward her with expressions ranging from confusion to outright disbelief. Who was this quiet woman who rarely spoke above a whisper? And why did she think she could accomplish what the base's most experienced mechanics couldn't handle? For 12 long years, Sofia Reyes had been the most overlooked person on Camp Pendleton. Every morning at exactly 0600 hours, she arrived at the motor pool wearing the same faded blue coveralls, her long black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her work boots that had seen better days sometime during the previous decade. She was 34 years old, average height, with calloused hands that spoke of years spent gripping wrenches and crawling under vehicles. Her official job title was Automotive Maintenance Technician Level 2, which essentially meant she handled oil changes, tire rotations, brake pad replacements, and other routine maintenance tasks that kept the base's fleet of vehicles running smoothly but didn't require advanced technical expertise. The Marines who worked alongside her knew almost nothing about her personal life. She never joined them for drinks after work, never participated in the weekend barbecues that the motor pool crew organized, and never shared stories about her family, her past, or her life outside the base. When conversations turned to military deployments, combat experiences, or war stories, Sofia would quietly focus more intently on whatever task she was performing, effectively removing herself from the discussion without actually leaving the room. Her colleagues had long ago stopped trying to include her in their social circles, accepting her as a competent but antisocial co-worker who preferred solitude to camaraderie. What made Sofia's situation even more isolating was the casual dismissiveness she faced from some of the younger Marines who rotated through the motor pool. Lance Corporal Jenkins, a 22-year-old from Texas who had completed 2 deployments and never let anyone forget it, had a particular talent for making condescending comments whenever Sofia was within earshot. "Hey Reyes," he would call out while she was bent over an engine. "Make sure you don't break anything important while you're playing with those tools." His buddies would chuckle, and Sofia would continue working without acknowledging the comment, her jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. The dismissive attitude wasn't limited to the enlisted men. Even some of the junior officers treated her like part of the background scenery. Lieutenant Morrison, fresh out of officer training and eager to prove his leadership capabilities, had once walked directly to Corporal Martinez to ask about a vehicle repair that Sofia had been working on for 3 days. When Martinez pointed out that Sofia was the one handling the job, Morrison barely glanced in her direction before saying, "Well, have someone qualified take a look at it when they get a chance." Sofia had completed the repair 2 hours later, leaving a detailed report on Morrison's desk, but never received so much as an acknowledgement. The motor pool itself was a massive concrete building that housed everything from lightweight reconnaissance vehicles to heavy-duty cargo trucks. The air was perpetually thick with the smell of motor oil, diesel fuel, and the metallic tang of welding work. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across workbenches cluttered with tools, parts, and technical manuals. Sofia's assigned workspace was in the back corner, near the parts storage area, where she had set up a meticulously organized collection of tools that she had purchased with her own money over the years. Every wrench, every socket, every specialized diagnostic device had its designated place, and she knew the location of each tool even in complete darkness. Her daily routine was as predictable as sunrise. She would arrive early before most of the other mechanics, and spend the first 30 minutes of each day cleaning and organizing her workspace. Then she would check the work orders that had been assigned to her, prioritizing them based on urgency and the availability of parts. She approached each task with methodical precision, following repair procedures exactly as outlined in the technical manuals, double-checking her work and maintaining detailed records of every repair she completed. Her efficiency ratings were CONSISTENTLY. Her error rate was practically zero, and vehicles she repaired stayed repaired. But none of these achievements seemed to earn her recognition or advancement opportunities. During lunch breaks, while other Marines gathered in groups to share meals and conversation, Sofia would sit alone at a small table near the vending machines, usually reading technical manuals or industry publications that she subscribed to with her own money. She had an insatiable appetite for learning about new automotive technologies, advanced diagnostic techniques, and emerging trends in military vehicle design. Her personal library, stored in a small metal locker, included dozens of specialized publications that most of her colleagues had never heard of, covering everything from hybrid electric systems to advanced materials science applications in engine design. The other mechanics had developed various theories about Sofia's background and motivations. Some assumed she was simply shy and would eventually warm up to the social aspects of military life. Others believed she had experienced some kind of personal trauma that made her reluctant to form close relationships. A few suspected she was dealing with family problems or financial difficulties that kept her focused on work rather than socializing. The most common assumption was that she lacked confidence in her abilities and preferred to stay in the background rather than risk making mistakes that might embarrass her in front of her more experienced colleagues. All of these theories were completely wrong, but Sofia had worked very hard over the past 12 years to ensure that nobody would discover the truth. She had deliberately cultivated an image of competent mediocrity, someone skilled enough to handle routine tasks without drawing attention but not so exceptional as to invite scrutiny or curiosity about her background. She had perfected the art of being simultaneously visible and invisible, present but unremarkable, contributing without standing out. The truth about Sofia Reyes was buried in classified military records that fewer than 5 people had ever accessed. Those records told a very different story about her capabilities, her experience, and her reasons for choosing to hide in plain sight among the routine maintenance operations of a peacetime motor pool. But as the radio continued crackling with increasingly desperate updates about the stranded Marines and their failing vehicles, Sofia's carefully constructed facade was about to crumble completely. The emergency situation developing overseas was unlike anything the base had faced in recent months. The convoy of 3 Humvees had been carrying critical medical supplies and communication equipment to a forward operating base when all three vehicles experienced simultaneous mechanical failures in an area known for frequent insurgent activity. The failures weren't random accidents. Intelligence reports suggested that enemy forces had been using new tactics involving electromagnetic pulse devices designed to disable military vehicles' electronic systems, leaving Marines stranded and vulnerable to capture or worse. The motor pool at Camp Pendleton operated on a rigid hierarchy that Sofia had learned to navigate with careful precision over her 12 years of service. At the top of the food chain sat Master Sergeant Rodriguez, a career Marine with 23 years of experience who had earned his stripes maintaining vehicles in some of the most challenging environments the Corps had to offer. Rodriguez was respected but intimidating, known for his explosive temper when equipment failures put Marines in danger and his unwavering dedication to keeping every vehicle in peak operational condition. Beneath Rodriguez were the senior mechanics, seasoned professionals like Staff Sergeant Thompson and Sergeant Williams, who had earned their positions through years of proven expertise and leadership capabilities. These men commanded respect from the junior mechanics and were typically assigned the most complex repairs, the newest equipment, and the most critical deadlines. They moved through the motor pool with confident authority, making decisions about repair priorities, supervising less experienced personnel, and serving as the primary interface between the mechanical crews and the base command structure. Middle tier consisted of corporals and experienced lance corporals who had developed specialized skills in particular areas: transmission repair, electrical systems, hydraulics, or engine diagnostics. These Marines often worked independently on moderately complex tasks and were beginning to take on supervisory responsibilities for the newest arrivals. They formed the backbone of the motor pool's daily operations, handling the steady stream of routine repairs and maintenance that kept hundreds of vehicles operational across the base. At the bottom of the hierarchy were the junior enlisted personnel, fresh out of technical training schools, eager to prove themselves, but lacking the real-world experience necessary to handle anything beyond basic maintenance tasks. These young Marines were assigned to work alongside more experienced mechanics, learning through observation and gradually taking on more responsibility as they demonstrated competence and reliability. Sofia occupied a strange position within this structure. Technically, her rank and years of service should have placed her solidly in the middle tier, with supervisory responsibilities and access to the more challenging repair assignments. However, she had consistently declined opportunities for advancement, turned down leadership positions, and actively avoided situations that would increase her visibility within the organization. Her supervisors had learned to rely on her for consistent, high-quality work on routine tasks, but they rarely considered her for anything that might stretch her capabilities or showcase her skills. This self-imposed limitation had created a peculiar dynamic in her relationships with colleagues. The senior mechanics respected her work ethic and reliability, but found her lack of ambition puzzling and occasionally frustrating. Staff Sergeant Thompson had once pulled her aside to ask why she wasn't interested in advancing to a supervisory role, pointing out that her technical knowledge and attention to detail made her an obvious candidate for promotion. Sofia had deflected the conversation with vague comments about being satisfied with her current responsibilities and not wanting the additional stress that came with leadership positions. The junior mechanics presented a different challenge. Many of them arrived at the motor pool with enthusiasm and confidence, eager to prove that their technical training had prepared them for real-world challenges. When they discovered that Sofia, who appeared to be just another routine maintenance worker, consistently produced better results than they could achieve, some responded with resentment or dismissiveness. Lance Corporal Jenkins was the most vocal in his criticism, but he wasn't alone in questioning why someone with Sofia's apparent limitations was being assigned tasks that he felt should go to Marines with more obvious potential. "I don't understand. Why they keep giving the interesting jobs to Reyes. Jenkins complained to his friend Corporal Patterson during a smoke break behind the motor pool. She never says anything, never participates in training discussions, never volunteers for anything challenging. Meanwhile, those of us who actually want to advance our careers get stuck with oil changes and tire rotations. Patterson, who had worked alongside Sofia on several projects and had developed a grudging respect for her thoroughness, usually tried to defend her, but Jenkins' complaints reflected a sentiment shared by several of the younger Marines. The gender dynamics added another layer of complexity to Sofia's situation. The motor pool was overwhelmingly male, and while the Marine Corps had made significant strides in integrating women into all occupational specialties, the automotive maintenance field remained dominated by men who had grown up working on cars and trucks as teenagers. Some of the Marines made conscious efforts to be inclusive and professional, but others harbored subtle biases about women's mechanical aptitude that influenced their interactions with Sofia. These biases manifested in various ways, from Lance Corporal Martinez's habit of double-checking Sofia's work without being asked, to Staff Sergeant Williams' tendency to assign her the cleaner maintenance tasks that were less likely to result in grease-stained uniforms or scraped knuckles. Most of these behaviors were probably unconscious rather than deliberately discriminatory, but they contributed to an environment where Sofia's capabilities were consistently underestimated, and her contributions were frequently overlooked. Sofia had developed sophisticated strategies for managing these interpersonal challenges while maintaining her carefully constructed low profile. She arrived early and stayed late to avoid the social interactions that occurred during shift changes and meal breaks. She volunteered for night shifts and weekend duties that offered solitude and reduced supervision. When forced to participate in group projects, she contributed her share of the work competently, but avoided taking leadership roles or making suggestions that might showcase her extensive knowledge. Her communication style was deliberately minimal and deferential. When supervisors asked for her opinion on technical issues, she provided accurate information, but framed it in ways that suggested she was simply repeating what she had read in manuals rather than drawing on personal experience. When colleagues made mistakes or struggled with challenging repairs, she occasionally offered subtle assistance, but always in ways that allowed them to take credit for the solutions. She had mastered the art of being helpful without being memorable, competent without being impressive. The physical environment of the motor pool reinforced these social dynamics. The workspace was arranged to reflect the hierarchy, with senior mechanics occupying the best-lit areas near the main entrance, equipped with the newest tools and diagnostic equipment. Junior personnel worked in less desirable locations, often sharing tools and competing for access to specialized equipment. Sofia's corner workspace, while clean and well-organized, was clearly designated for routine maintenance rather than complex repairs. The work itself followed predictable patterns that Sofia had learned to navigate efficiently. Each morning brought a fresh batch of work orders, ranging from simple fluid changes to complex diagnostic challenges. The assignments were distributed based on a combination of factors including rank, experience, workload, and the specific skills required for each task. Sofia consistently received assignments appropriate for her apparent skill level, which meant lots of routine maintenance and relatively few opportunities to demonstrate advanced capabilities. Her colleagues had developed expectations about her performance that were both accurate and completely inadequate. They knew she would complete assigned tasks on time, follow procedures correctly, maintain detailed records, and produce reliable results. What they didn't know was that she often identified additional problems during routine maintenance that she chose not to report, understanding that calling attention to her diagnostic abilities would raise questions about her background and training. During the rare occasions when equipment failures stumped the senior mechanics, Sofia would sometimes observe their troubleshooting efforts from a distance, mentally noting the solutions while they worked through systematic diagnostic procedures. She had developed an almost supernatural ability to diagnose complex mechanical problems simply by listening to engine sounds, observing vibration patterns, or noting subtle changes in performance characteristics. However, she carefully avoided sharing these insights unless directly asked, and even then she presented her observations tentatively, as educated guesses rather than confident diagnoses. The base's vehicle fleet presented constant challenges that tested every mechanic's skills and knowledge. Humvees, trucks, armored personnel carriers, and specialized equipment each required different expertise, different tools, and different approaches to maintenance and repair. The vehicles operated in harsh conditions, were subjected to heavy use, and incorporated increasingly sophisticated electronic systems that demanded advanced diagnostic capabilities. Keeping this diverse fleet operational required mechanics who could adapt quickly to new technologies while maintaining proficiency with older, simpler systems. Sofia had quietly developed expertise with virtually every vehicle type on the base, but she had been extremely careful to conceal the breadth and depth of her knowledge. When assigned to work on unfamiliar equipment, she would spend time researching technical manuals and procedures, creating the impression that she was learning rather than remembering. She had developed an extensive personal library of reference materials that she consulted openly, reinforcing her image as someone who relied on documented procedures rather than intuitive understanding. The approaching crisis would shatter this carefully maintained facade, forcing Sofia to reveal capabilities that she had spent 12 years concealing. The Marines stranded overseas needed someone with exceptional skills, extensive experience, and the confidence to work under extreme pressure. They needed someone exactly like the person Sofia had once been, before she had chosen to disappear into the anonymous world of routine, maintenance, and predictable mediocrity. The dismissive treatment Sofia endured wasn't limited to casual comments or overlooked contributions. It had become a systematic pattern that reinforced her invisibility within the motor pool's social structure. During monthly training sessions, when Marines gathered to learn about new equipment or updated procedures, Sofia would sit in the back row, taking meticulous notes while her colleagues asked questions and participated in discussions. Instructors rarely called on her, and when they did, her responses were so precise and technically accurate that they often moved quickly to the next topic without follow-up questions. Lieutenant Colonel Barnes, the base's vehicle maintenance officer, conducted quarterly inspections of the motor pool operations. During these visits, he would walk through the facility with Master Sergeant Rodriguez, reviewing work orders, examining completed repairs, and discussing operational challenges. Sofia had perfected the art of appearing busy with routine tasks during these inspections, ensuring that she remained part of the background scenery rather than a focal point for questions or evaluation. On the rare occasions when Barnes noticed her work, his comments were limited to generic observations about maintaining standards and following procedures. The most painful aspect of her invisibility was watching less experienced Marines receive recognition and advancement opportunities that she could have handled with exceptional competence. Corporal Martinez had been promoted to sergeant after successfully diagnosing a complex electrical problem that had stumped several other mechanics. Sofia had identified the same issue within minutes of examining the vehicle, but she had kept her observations to herself, allowing Martinez to work through the systematic diagnostic process and eventually arrive at the correct solution. She had even subtly guided his troubleshooting efforts by asking carefully phrased questions that directed his attention toward the actual problem area. Staff Sergeant Thompson had earned a commendation for developing an innovative maintenance procedure that reduced service time for transmission repairs by 30%. Sofia had been quietly using this similar technique for years, having developed it during her previous career, but she had never documented or shared her methods. When she saw Thompson implementing essentially the same approach, she felt a complex mixture of pride in seeing effective techniques adopted and frustration at remaining unrecognized for her contributions to the field. The younger Marine's attitudes toward her had evolved into a form of benign condescension that was almost more insulting than overt hostility. Lance Corporal Jenkins had taken on the role of her unofficial mentor, offering unsolicited advice about tool maintenance, safety procedures, and career development. His suggestions were technically correct but elementary, covering topics that Sofia had mastered decades earlier. She endured these lectures with patient politeness, occasionally asking questions that reinforced his perception of her as someone who needed guidance and instruction. "You know, Reyes," Jenkins had said the previous week while they worked on adjacent vehicles, "if you really applied yourself and maybe took some additional training courses, you could probably advance to corporal within a couple of years. The key is showing initiative and demonstrating that you can handle more complex responsibilities." Sofia had nodded appreciatively and thanked him for his advice, while mentally calculating that she had been performing complex automotive diagnostics since before Jenkins was born. Corporal Patterson represented a different type of challenge. He was genuinely kind and well-intentioned, but his efforts to include Sofia in social activities and conversations often put her in awkward positions, where maintaining her low profile required seeming ungrateful or antisocial. Patterson had invited her to join the motor pool's softball team, attend unit barbecues, and participate in volunteer activities off base. Each invitation required careful deflection that wouldn't offend him while preserving her carefully constructed image of someone who preferred solitude to social engagement. "I really think you'd enjoy getting to know everyone better," Patterson had told her earnestly. "We're like a family here, and families look out for each other. Plus, it might help your career prospects if the supervisor saw you taking a more active role in unit activities." His concern was genuine, but it was based on a complete misunderstanding of Sofia's situation and motivations. She appreciated his kindness while recognizing that following his advice would destroy the anonymity that she had worked so hard to maintain. The base's social structure extended beyond the motor pool, creating additional challenges for Sofia's efforts to remain invisible. The dining facility, recreational areas, and administrative buildings were all spaces where Marines from different units interacted, shared experiences, and formed the professional networks that influenced career advancement. Sofia navigated these spaces with careful attention to avoiding situations that might lead to deeper conversations about her background, experience, or qualifications. She had developed a repertoire of responses to common questions that provided just enough information to satisfy casual curiosity without revealing anything significant about her past. When asked about her hometown, she mentioned growing up in various military communities as a dependent, which explained her familiarity with military culture while avoiding specific details about her family's service history. When colleagues inquired about her automotive training, she referenced the standard technical schools that all Marines attended, deflecting questions about additional education or specialized experience. Her living arrangements off base contributed to her isolation and anonymity. Sofia rented a small apartment in a modest complex that housed several junior Marines and civilian employees who worked on base but weren't part of the tight-knit military community. Her neighbors knew her as a quiet, reliable tenant who kept regular hours and minded her own business. She had furnished the apartment with functional simplicity, avoiding personal decorations or photographs that might prompt questions from the occasional visitor. The apartment's most significant feature was a locked spare bedroom that Sofia had converted into a private workshop and study area. This room contained an impressive collection of automotive diagnostic equipment, technical manuals, and specialized tools that represented a significant financial investment accumulated over many years. She used this space to stay current with evolving automotive technologies, practice advanced diagnostic techniques, and maintain skills that she couldn't display in her official capacity at the motor pool, late at night, when her neighbors were asleep and the risk of discovery was minimal. Sofia would work on personal projects that challenged her technical abilities and satisfied her need for intellectual stimulation. She rebuilt engines, modified electronic control systems, and experimented with performance enhancements that pushed the boundaries of conventional automotive engineering. These projects served as an outlet for expertise that she couldn't express in her professional role, providing a connection to the person she had once been, while maintaining the fiction of who she appeared to be. Her financial situation reflected the same careful balance between maintaining her cover and preserving her capabilities. Sofia lived well within her means as a mid-level enlisted Marine, but she invested significant portions of her income in maintaining her hidden workshop and staying current with industry developments. She subscribed to professional publications under fictitious names, purchased specialized equipment through 30 vendors, and maintained professional certifications that she couldn't list on her official military records. The emotional toll of maintaining this double life had accumulated over 12 years of self-imposed exile from her true capabilities. Sofia had developed sophisticated psychological coping mechanisms that allowed her to function effectively, while suppressing fundamental aspects of her identity and expertise. She had learned to find satisfaction in small accomplishments, take pride in helping others succeed, and derive meaning from service that went unrecognized and unappreciated. However, the constant vigilance required to maintain her cover story created a form of chronic stress that affected every aspect of her daily life. She had to monitor every conversation for potential slip-ups, carefully control her emotional reactions to technical discussions, and resist the impulse to correct mistakes or offer superior solutions when she witnessed inefficient or incorrect procedures. The mental energy required for this constant self-monitoring was exhausting, contributing to her preference for solitude and her reluctance to engage in social activities that increased the risk of exposure. Her relationship with the Marine Corps itself was complicated by this hidden identity. Sofia genuinely believed in the organization's mission and values, respected the institution that had shaped her career, and felt loyalty to the Marines she served alongside. However, she also felt frustrated by the limitations imposed by her chosen anonymity, disappointed by the waste of her capabilities, and occasionally resentful of colleagues who received recognition for accomplishments that she could have achieved. More effectively, the approaching crisis represented both her greatest fear and her deepest desire, a situation that would force her to choose between maintaining her carefully constructed facade and utilizing the skills that defined her true identity. For 12 years, she had successfully avoided such moments, but the desperate radio calls from overseas suggested that her time in hiding was about to end dramatically and irreversibly. The subtle clues to Sofia's hidden expertise had been accumulating for years, visible only to those who knew what to look for. During routine maintenance operations, she displayed an uncanny ability to diagnose problems before running formal diagnostic procedures. While other mechanics would connect computerized testing equipment and work through systematic troubleshooting protocols, Sofia would often pause near a malfunctioning vehicle, listen to the engine for a few seconds, and then proceed directly to the source of the problem with remarkable accuracy. Staff Sergeant Thompson had noticed this pattern during a particularly challenging repair job involving a Humvee with intermittent electrical failures. The diagnostic computer couldn't isolate the problem, and two experienced mechanics had spent an entire day checking wiring harnesses and electrical connections without success. Sofia had been assigned to perform routine maintenance on an adjacent vehicle, but Thompson observed her glancing occasionally at the problematic Humvee with an expression that suggested she was processing information that others were missing. Reyes, Thompson had called out, "You got any thoughts on this electrical issue?" "We're running out of ideas over here." Sofia had hesitated for a moment, clearly weighing her response carefully, before suggesting that they check the ground connection behind the left rear wheel well. Her tone was tentative, almost apologetic, as if she were offering a wild guess rather than a confident diagnosis. The mechanics found the corroded ground connection exactly where she had indicated, solving a problem that had stumped more senior personnel for hours. When Thompson asked how she had known to look in that specific location, Sofia had shrugged and mentioned something about similar problems she had read about in technical bulletins. Her explanation was plausible but didn't account for the certainty with which she had identified the solution or the speed with which she had arrived at her diagnosis. Thompson filed the incident away as an example of Sofia's thoroughness in staying current with technical publications, but he began paying closer attention to her work habits and problem-solving approaches. Similar incidents occurred with increasing frequency, each one carefully managed by Sofia to avoid drawing excessive attention while still contributing to successful repairs. During a complex transmission rebuild that was scheduled to take 3 days, Sofia worked on routine maintenance tasks in the same bay, occasionally offering subtle suggestions that accelerated the repair process. When Sergeant Williams struggled with a hydraulic system problem that required specialized knowledge of pressure dynamics, Sofia asked a series of seemingly innocent questions that guided his thinking toward the correct solution. Her tool collection provided another set of clues for observant colleagues. While most Marines use standard issue tools supplemented by basic personal equipment, Sofia had accumulated an impressive array of specialized instruments that suggested extensive experience with advanced automotive systems. She owned diagnostic equipment that cost more than most junior Marines earned in a month, precision measuring devices typically used only by master-level technicians, and specialized tools designed for specific repair procedures that weren't commonly performed at the base level. Corporal Martinez had borrowed one of Sofia's torque wrenches during a critical repair, and was surprised to discover that it was a professional-grade instrument calibrated to tolerances far beyond what their routine maintenance required. When he complimented the quality of her equipment, Sofia had explained that she believed in using proper tools for proper work, deflecting questions about where she had acquired such expensive instruments or why she felt they were necessary for her assigned duties. Her personal study habits provided additional evidence of expertise that exceeded her apparent responsibilities. Sofia spent break times reading technical manuals and industry publications that covered advanced topics rarely encountered in routine maintenance operations. She subscribed to professional journals focused on cutting-edge automotive technologies, military vehicle development, and experimental engine designs. When colleagues noticed her reading materials, she would explain that she enjoyed learning about new developments in the field, presenting her extensive technical knowledge as intellectual curiosity rather than professional experience. The base library's computer system maintained records of Sofia's research activities that would have surprised anyone who took the time to examine them. She regularly accessed databases containing technical specifications for vehicles that weren't part of the base's inventory, researched repair procedures for systems that she had never officially worked on, and downloaded technical bulletins related to advanced diagnostic techniques. Her search history revealed an appetite for technical information that went far beyond what would be expected from someone in her position. During monthly safety briefings, Sofia's questions and comments occasionally revealed knowledge that seemed inconsistent with her official role. When discussing proper procedures for handling hazardous materials, she would ask about specific chemical interactions that weren't covered in standard training curricula. During discussions of vehicle safety systems, she would reference technical standards and regulatory requirements that were typically known only to specialists in those areas. Master Sergeant Rodriguez had begun to notice these anomalies, though He hadn't yet connected them into a coherent picture of Sofia's true capabilities. During a particularly complex repair involving a vehicle's electronic warfare countermeasures, Sofia had offered a suggestion about electromagnetic shielding that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of military electronics. When Rodriguez asked where she had learned about such specialized topics, Sofia had mentioned attending various training sessions over the years, providing an explanation that was technically accurate but deliberately vague about the specific nature and scope of her education. Her physical capabilities also provided clues that observant colleagues were beginning to notice. Sofia possessed unusual strength and endurance for someone of her size, regularly handling heavy components and working in challenging positions without apparent strain. She moved with an efficiency and confidence that suggested extensive experience with the physical demands of automotive repair, displaying muscle memory and spatial awareness that typically developed only after years of intensive hands-on work. During emergency repairs that required working under time pressure, Sofia's performance often exceeded what would be expected from someone with her apparent experience level. She would work with calm focus while others showed stress, maintain steady hands during precision operations, and demonstrate decision-making skills that suggested familiarity with high-stakes situations. These moments revealed glimpses of a professional competence that she normally kept carefully concealed. Her interactions with visiting specialists and contractors provided another source of revealing incidents. When civilian technicians arrived to perform specialized maintenance on advanced electronic systems, Sofia would occasionally ask questions or make observations that impressed the visiting experts with their sophistication and insight. These interactions suggested that she possessed knowledge of cutting-edge technologies that weren't part of standard military training curricula. A particularly telling incident occurred when a team of engineers from the vehicle manufacturer visited the base to investigate recurring problems with a new model of armored transport. Sofia had been assigned to assist with basic support tasks, but the engineers quickly recognized that she understood the technical issues at a level that exceeded her official role. One engineer had commented privately to Master Sergeant Rodriguez that Sofia asked better questions than most of the senior mechanics they typically worked with. Her response to equipment failures revealed another pattern that suggested hidden expertise. When complex systems malfunctioned, Sofia would often display an immediate understanding of the problem's implications and potential solutions, even for equipment that she hadn't officially worked on before. She would anticipate the need for specific tools or parts, suggest alternative repair approaches when standard procedures weren't effective, and demonstrate troubleshooting skills that seemed to exceed her official training and experience. The cumulative effect of these incidents was creating a growing sense among some of her colleagues that Sofia possessed capabilities and knowledge that she wasn't revealing. However, her careful management of these situations had prevented anyone from forming a complete picture of her true expertise or questioning the official narrative of her background and qualifications. She had successfully maintained the delicate balance between demonstrating enough competence to be useful and avoiding the level of performance that would invite serious scrutiny. This carefully constructed facade was about to be shattered by circumstances that would make concealment impossible and force Sofia to choose between maintaining her anonymity and utilizing skills that could mean the difference between life and death for Marines in desperate need of her expertise. Before, Sofia Reyes became the invisible maintenance technician hiding in the shadows of Camp Pendleton's motor pool. She had been Staff Sergeant Sofia Martinez, one of the most decorated automotive specialists in Marine Corps' history. Her military career had begun 18 years earlier when she enlisted straight out of high school in Phoenix, Arizona, driven by a combination of patriotic duty and a desperate need to escape a family situation that had become increasingly unstable. After her father's death in a construction accident, the Marine Corps' recruiting station in downtown Phoenix had been bustling with activity on the day Sofia walked through the doors. Her 18th birthday still 2 weeks away, but her determination already fully formed. Gunnery Sergeant Wilson, a weathered veteran with 22 years of service, had initially tried to steer her toward administrative or communications roles, assuming that a petite young woman from suburban Arizona would be better suited to desk work than the physically demanding technical fields that interested her most. Sofia had surprised him by requesting assignment to automotive maintenance, explaining that she had spent her teenage years working in her uncle's independent garage, learning to rebuild engines and diagnose complex mechanical problems on everything from vintage muscle cars to modern import vehicles. Uncle Miguel had been a master mechanic who treated automotive repair as both science and art, teaching Sofia that understanding machines required intuition as well as technical knowledge, patience as well as skill, and respect for the intricate systems that made modern transportation possible. Thought her performance at Marine Corps Recruit Depot Paris Island had been exceptional from the first day of training. While other recruits struggled with the physical demands and psychological pressure of military indoctrination, Sofia thrived in the structured environment that rewarded discipline, attention to detail, and unwavering commitment to excellence. Her drill instructors quickly recognized her leadership potential and technical aptitude, recommending her for advanced training opportunities that would accelerate her career development. After completing basic training, Sofia was assigned to the Marine Corps Logistics Base in Albany, Georgia, for automotive maintenance training that would establish the foundation for her military specialty. The program was intensive and comprehensive, covering everything from basic mechanical principles to advanced diagnostic procedures for military vehicles. Sofia distinguished herself immediately, demonstrating an intuitive understanding of complex systems that impressed her instructors and earned the respect of her fellow students. Her first assignment after completing technical training was with the 2nd Marine Logistics Group at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, where she joined a maintenance unit responsible for keeping an entire regiment's vehicles operational. The workload was demanding and the standards were unforgiving, but Sofia excelled in the high-pressure environment that challenged her technical skills and tested her ability to work effectively under stress. Within 2 years, she had earned promotion to Lance Corporal and was being assigned increasingly complex repair challenges that showcased her exceptional diagnostic abilities. Her supervisors began recognizing her as someone with a rare talent for understanding automotive systems at a level that went beyond memorizing procedures and following technical manuals. She possessed an almost supernatural ability to listen to an engine and identify problems that sophisticated diagnostic equipment couldn't detect, to feel vibrations that revealed underlying mechanical issues, and to anticipate failures before they occurred. Her reputation for technical excellence led to assignment with the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force's Logistics Support Element, a position that required maintaining vehicles under combat conditions in some of the world's most challenging environments. During her first deployment to Afghanistan, Sofia was responsible for keeping armored vehicles operational in conditions that destroyed equipment and tested every system to its breaking point. The work was dangerous, technically demanding, and absolutely critical to mission success. Afghanistan changed everything for Sofia. The combat environment revealed capabilities she didn't know she possessed, forcing her to develop solutions to problems that weren't covered in any technical manual. She learned to improvise repairs using salvaged parts, to diagnose complex problems without proper diagnostic equipment, and to work effectively while under enemy fire. Her innovations saved lives, kept critical missions operational, and earned recognition from commanders who had never seen anyone with her combination of technical skill and courage under pressure. During her 2nd deployment, Sofia was assigned to a forward operating base near Helmand Province, where her unit supported special operations forces conducting high-risk missions deep in enemy territory. The vehicles used for these operations were sophisticated, heavily modified, and absolutely essential to mission success. Equipment failures could mean death for entire teams, making Sofia's role critical to operations that she couldn't fully understand, but knew were vital to the broader war effort. It was during this deployment that Sofia earned the Navy Achievement Medal for her actions during a complex rescue operation. A special operations team had been ambushed while returning from a classified mission, and their primary vehicle had suffered catastrophic damage to its drivetrain and electrical systems. The team was pinned down by enemy fire, unable to move. With no backup transportation available and enemy reinforcements approaching their position, Sofia had volunteered to accompany a rescue convoy carrying a replacement vehicle. But when they reached the ambush site, they discovered that the terrain made it impossible to extract the damaged vehicle or position the replacement where the stranded team could reach it safely. The solution required field modifications to both vehicles that would allow the rescue operation to proceed, work that had to be completed while under intermittent enemy fire, working with bullets impacting the ground around her. Sofia had systematically diagnosed the damaged vehicle's problems, identified which systems could be repaired quickly, and developed a plan to restore enough functionality to allow the team to escape. The repair required improvised solutions using parts from multiple vehicles, creative approaches to bypassing damaged systems, and technical skills that exceeded anything she had learned in formal training. The rescue was successful, with all team members extracted safely, but the experience had revealed to Sofia that her technical abilities were exceptional even by military standards. Her commanding officers began assigning her to increasingly specialized roles that required not just mechanical expertise, but also the ability to innovate under extreme pressure and solve problems that had never been encountered before. Her third deployment took her to Iraq, where she was assigned to a logistics support unit working with explosive ordnance disposal teams. The vehicles used for EOD operations required constant modification and repair as they were subjected to blast damage, electronic interference, and operating conditions that pushed every system beyond its design parameters. Sofia's role involved not just maintaining these vehicles, but also developing improvements that would increase their effectiveness and survivability. This assignment connected her with a network of technical specialists who were pushing the boundaries of military vehicle technology. She worked alongside engineers from defense contractors, collaborated with researchers developing next-generation automotive systems, and contributed to classified projects that were advancing the state of military transportation technology. Her insights and innovations were incorporated into vehicle designs that would benefit Marines for decades to come. By her 8th year of service, Sofia had been promoted to Staff Sergeant and was recognized as one of the Marine Corps' premier technical experts. She had completed multiple advanced training programs, earned numerous specialized certifications, and developed a reputation that extended far beyond her immediate unit. Senior officers sought her input on technical decisions. Defense contractors recruited her for consulting projects, and her innovations were being studied and implemented throughout the military, automotive community. Her expertise extended beyond routine maintenance to include advanced diagnostics, system integration, performance optimization, and even basic engineering design. She had become fluent in the languages of mechanical engineering, electrical systems, and computer-controlled automotive technologies that were revolutionizing military vehicles. Her knowledge base encompassed not just current systems, but also emerging technologies that were still in development phases. The pinnacle of Sofia's military career came when she was selected for assignment to a classified program developing next-generation combat vehicles for Special Operations Forces. The project involved the most advanced automotive technologies available, required the highest levels of security clearance, and demanded technical expertise that only a handful of people in the entire military possessed. This assignment would have established Sofia as one of the Marine Corps' most valuable technical assets, positioning her for rapid promotion and eventual assignment to senior leadership roles where she could influence military vehicle development for the entire service. However, it was also this assignment that would lead to the catastrophic events that ended her career and forced her into 12 years of self-imposed exile from the world where she had once been a rising star. The classified program that would ultimately destroy Sofia's career was designated Project Wolverine, a joint development initiative between the Marine Corps, Army Special Operations Command, and 3 major defense contractors. The project's objective was creating a new generation of lightweight, heavily armored vehicles that could support special operations missions in environments where traditional military transportation was either too conspicuous or inadequately protected against emerging threats. Sofia's selection for the program came after an extensive vetting process that included comprehensive background investigations, psychological evaluations, and technical assessments that tested her knowledge of advanced automotive systems. Only 12 Marines from across the entire Corps were chosen for the project, representing the absolute elite of military automotive specialists. Her assignment came with a promotion to gunnery sergeant and access to classified technologies that were years ahead of anything in general military use. The project operated from a secure facility at Marine Corps Base Quantico, where Sofia worked, alongside engineers from Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, and Boeing Defense Systems. Her role involved testing prototype vehicles under simulated combat conditions, identifying weaknesses in design and performance, and developing solutions that would make the vehicles more effective in real-world operations. The work required not just technical expertise, but also deep understanding of how special operations forces actually used their equipment. In the field, the vehicles themselves were technological marvels that incorporated innovations from multiple industries. They featured hybrid electric propulsion systems that could operate silently for extended periods, advanced armor materials that provided protection while minimizing weight, and electronic systems that could interface with virtually any military communications or surveillance equipment. Each vehicle cost more than $3 million and represented thousands of hours of engineering development. Sofia's contributions to the project were immediately recognized as exceptional. She possessed an intuitive understanding of how the various systems interacted, could identify potential failure modes that the engineers had overlooked, and developed modifications that significantly improved vehicle performance and reliability. Her insights were incorporated into design revisions that enhanced every aspect of the vehicle's capabilities. The project's test facility included obstacle courses that simulated extreme operating conditions, environmental chambers that reproduced temperature and humidity extremes, and firing ranges where the vehicle's protective systems were evaluated against various weapons. Sofia spent months conducting exhaustive testing that pushed every system to its limits, documenting performance characteristics and identifying areas where improvements were needed. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying this story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Her expertise extended beyond mechanical systems to include the human factors that affected vehicle operation. She understood how fatigue, stress, and combat conditions influenced operator performance, and she developed modifications that made the vehicles more intuitive to operate under pressure. Her recommendations for control layout, visibility enhancements, and ergonomic improvements were adopted throughout the design process. The project's crown jewel was a prototype designated XM7 Phantom, a vehicle that incorporated every technological advancement the team had developed. The Phantom featured a revolutionary propulsion system that could switch seamlessly between silent electric operation and high-performance hybrid mode, armor that could stop armor-piercing rounds while weighing less than conventional steel protection, and electronic warfare capabilities that could jam enemy communications while remaining invisible to most. Detection Systems. Sofia had been primarily responsible for integrating the Phantom's complex systems, ensuring that the propulsion, armor, electronics, and weapon systems all worked together seamlessly. The vehicle represented the culmination of 3 years of development work and incorporated dozens of innovations that she had contributed to the project. It was scheduled for its final evaluation test on a Tuesday morning in September. That would determine whether the entire program would move forward to production. The test was conducted at a remote facility in the Nevada desert, where the Phantom would demonstrate its capabilities in conditions that closely approximated actual combat operations. The scenario involved infiltrating a simulated enemy compound, gathering intelligence, and extracting without detection. Success would require the vehicle to operate silently, avoid detection by sophisticated sensors, and provide protection for its crew while maintaining the mobility necessary for rapid extraction. Sofia was serving as the vehicle's crew chief for the test, responsible for monitoring all systems during the operation and ensuring that any problems were quickly identified and resolved. The crew included Major Patricia Hendricks, a special operations officer who would evaluate the vehicle's suitability for real-world missions, and Captain James Rodriguez, a communications specialist who would test the electronic warfare systems. Under realistic conditions, the first phase of the test proceeded flawlessly. The Phantom's silent propulsion system allowed it to approach the target area without detection. Its advanced sensors provided detailed intelligence about the simulated enemy compound, and its electronic warfare capabilities successfully jammed the opponent's communication systems. Sofia monitored dozens of system parameters simultaneously, noting that every component was performing within specifications. The problems began during the extraction phase, when the vehicle was transitioning from silent electric operation to high-performance hybrid mode for rapid escape. Sofia noticed irregular readings from the propulsion system's control computer, subtle variations in performance parameters that suggested developing problems with the complex interface between electric and conventional powertrains. The anomalies were minor and within acceptable operating ranges, but Sofia's experience told her that they indicated underlying issues that could escalate rapidly. She reported her observations to Major Hendricks, recommending that they abort the test and return to base for detailed diagnostics. The readings she was seeing reminded her of problems she had encountered during her combat deployments situations, where seemingly minor irregularities had preceded catastrophic system failures. However, Major Hendricks was under pressure to complete the evaluation on schedule, and the anomalies Sofia had identified weren't severe enough to justify stopping the test. According to established protocols, the decision to continue the test was technically correct based on the parameters they were monitoring. But Sofia's intuition told her that something was seriously wrong with the vehicle's systems. She had learned to trust these intuitions during her combat experience, where the ability to sense developing problems often meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. However, she was operating within a bureaucratic structure that valued documented evidence over intuitive assessment. As they accelerated away from the target area, the propulsion system's problems escalated rapidly. The interface between electric and conventional powertrains began experiencing synchronization failures that created dangerous instabilities in the vehicle's operation. Sofia recognized the symptoms immediately and began implementing emergency procedures to isolate the failing systems. But the problems were cascading faster than she could respond to them. The vehicle's electronic systems began experiencing interference from the propulsion system malfunctions, creating a cascade of failures that affected communications, navigation, and defensive systems simultaneously. Major Hendricks attempted to maintain control while Sofia worked desperately to stabilize the critical systems. But the vehicle's sophisticated electronics were failing in ways that the development team had never anticipated. Captain Rodriguez, was attempting to maintain communications with the test control center when the vehicle's main power distribution system experienced a catastrophic failure that sent electrical surges through every connected system. The surge damaged communications equipment, navigation systems, and the environmental controls that maintained safe conditions. Inside the heavily armored crew compartment, Sofia realized that they were facing a complete system failure that could trap them inside the vehicle, or worse, result in fires or explosions that would be fatal in the enclosed space. She began emergency shutdown procedures while directing Major Hendricks to find a safe location where they could evacuate the vehicle before the situation became critical. However, the propulsion system failures had also affected the vehicle's steering and braking systems, making it increasingly difficult to control. They were traveling at high speed across rough terrain when the steering system experienced a complete failure that sent the vehicle careening toward a deep ravine that bordered the test area. Major Hendricks fought to regain control while Sofia initiated every emergency system available, but the cascade of failures had overwhelmed the vehicle's redundant safety systems. The Phantom struck a boulder at the edge of the ravine and rolled multiple times before coming to rest upside down in the rocky creek bed below. Sofia regained consciousness to find herself hanging upside down in her harness, surrounded by smoke and the acrid smell of burning electronics. Major Hendricks was unconscious and bleeding from head injuries, while Captain Rodriguez was trapped beneath twisted metal and debris from the vehicle's destroyed interior. The crew compartment had maintained its structural integrity, but the impact had caused extensive damage to the vehicle's systems and created multiple hazards that threatened their survival. Working methodically despite her own injuries, Sofia managed to extract both of her crewmates from the wreckage and establish a secure perimeter while waiting for rescue teams to arrive. Her actions during the emergency were later cited as exemplary, demonstrating exactly the kind of competence and courage that had made her one of the Marine Corps' most valued technical specialists. However, the investigation that followed the accident would reveal system design flaws that Sofia had attempted to warn about, bureaucratic failures that had prevented proper response to her concerns, and a complex chain of events that would ultimately end her career and force her into more than a decade of self-imposed exile from the world, where she had once been a rising star. The investigation into the Phantom crash began within hours of the rescue operation, as teams of engineers, military officials, and safety inspectors descended on the Nevada test site to examine the wreckage and piece together the sequence of events that had led to the catastrophic system failure. The investigation was classified at the highest levels due to the sensitive nature of the technologies involved, but Sofia found herself at the center of intense scrutiny as both a key witness and a potential scapegoat for the program's most devastating setback. The preliminary findings were damning for everyone involved in the project. The propulsion system's failure had resulted from a design flaw in the interface between electric and conventional powertrains, exactly the type of problem that Sofia had been warning about in her detailed technical reports over the previous 6 months. Her documentation showed a pattern of minor anomalies and performance irregularities that she had consistently flagged as indicators of deeper systemic problems requiring immediate attention. Major General Patricia Blackwood, who chaired the investigation board, had initially praised Sofia's actions during the emergency and her thoroughness in documenting technical concerns throughout the development process. Sofia's reports demonstrated exceptional technical insight and showed that she had identified the root causes of the accident long before the catastrophic test failure occurred. Her recommendations for additional testing and system modifications could have prevented the accident entirely if they had been implemented when she first submitted them. However, the political dynamics surrounding the investigation began to shift. As the full scope of the program's problems became apparent, Project Wolverine represented a $3 billion investment in next-generation military technology. involving contracts with major defense firms and commitments to congressional oversight committees that had approved funding based on promises of revolutionary capabilities. The accident threatened not just the immediate program, but the entire strategy for modernizing special operations transportation. Sofia's technical reports, which had initially been viewed as evidence of her competence and dedication, began to be reinterpreted as documentation of her failure to adequately communicate the severity of the problems she had identified. Investigation board members questioned why she hadn't been more forceful in advocating for design changes, why she had continued participating in tests despite her concerns, and whether her warnings had been specific enough to trigger the emergency protocols that might have prevented the accident. The defense contractors involved in the project had their own interests in shaping the investigation's conclusions. Lockheed Martin's representatives argued that Sofia's technical modifications to the propulsion system had introduced instabilities that weren't present in the original design. General Dynamics claimed that her integration work had created conflicts between systems that were designed to operate independently. Boeing's engineers suggested that her testing procedures had pushed the vehicle beyond its intended operational parameters. These accusations were technically sophisticated, but fundamentally dishonest, as they ignored the extensive documentation showing that Sofia's modifications had actually improved system performance, and that the underlying design flaws existed in the original specifications. However, the contractors had teams of lawyers and engineers working to protect their company's interests, while Sofia had only her own technical knowledge and the testimony of colleagues who were themselves under investigation. The situation became more complex when Major Hendricks, who was recovering from severe head injuries sustained in the crash, began experiencing memory problems that affected her ability to provide clear testimony about the events leading up to the accident. Her medical condition prevented her from confirming Sofia's account of the warnings she had provided during the test, leaving Sofia without crucial corroboration for her version of events. Captain Rodriguez had suffered permanent disabilities from his injuries and was medically retired from the Marine Corps before the investigation concluded. His testimony supported Sofia's technical assessment, but his own role in the accident came under scrutiny when investigators discovered that he had failed to follow established protocols for reporting system anomalies during the test. His credibility as a witness was compromised by questions about his own performance during the critical minutes before the crash. As the investigation progressed, Sofia found herself increasingly isolated and without effective advocates within the military hierarchy. The officers who had originally supported her assignment to the project were now focused on protecting their own careers and distancing themselves from decisions that had led to the catastrophic failure. The technical experts who understood her contributions were either involved in their own aspects of the investigation or constrained by classification requirements that limited their ability to provide public support. The media attention surrounding the accident created additional pressure for the investigation to identify clear causes and assign definitive responsibility. Defense industry publications reported on the program's problems. Congressional oversight committees demanded explanations for the waste of taxpayer resources, and military reform advocates used the accident as evidence of broader problems with defense acquisition processes. Sofia's name began appearing in news reports as a central figure in the controversy, destroying any possibility that she could quietly resume her military career. The investigation's final report was a masterpiece of bureaucratic compromise that distributed blame broadly while protecting the institutional interests of all major stakeholders. The report acknowledged that Sofia had identified legitimate technical concerns and had followed proper procedures in documenting her findings, but it also concluded that her communication of these concerns had been inadequate and that her modifications to vehicle systems had contributed to the accident's severity. The report's technical analysis was superficial and ignored much of the detailed evidence that Sofia had provided about the system design flaws. The contractor's liability was minimized through careful language that emphasized the experimental nature of the program and the inherent risks associated with developing advanced technologies. The military leadership's responsibility was diffused. By focusing on procedural failures rather than the substantive decisions that had led to the accident. For Sofia personally, the report's conclusions were devastating. While she wasn't formally disciplined or court-martialed, the investigation's findings effectively ended her career prospects within the Marine Corps. Her security clearances were suspended pending additional review. Her assignment to classified programs was terminated. And her reputation within the military technical community was permanently damaged by her association with the program's failure. The psychological impact of these events was compounded by Sofia's growing understanding that the accident could have been prevented if the military bureaucracy had been more responsive to her technical warnings. Major Hendricks and Captain Rodriguez had suffered life-altering injuries because institutional priorities had taken precedence over safety concerns that she had clearly identified and documented. The knowledge that her expertise had been available but ignored created a burden of guilt that affected every aspect of her life. Her family relationships, which had already been strained by the demands of her military career, deteriorated further. As she struggled to cope with the investigation's aftermath, her marriage to fellow Marine Captain David Martinez ended in divorce as the stress of the situation overwhelmed their ability to support each other through the crisis. Her parents, who had been proud of her military achievements, found it difficult to understand how their daughter had become associated with such a public failure. The final blow came when Sofia was reassigned to a routine logistics position at Camp Pendleton, a placement that was technically lateral but represented a clear demotion from her previous status as one of the Marine Corps' premier technical experts. The assignment was presented as an opportunity for her to rebuild her career, but everyone involved understood that it was actually a form of exile designed to remove her from positions where she might cause additional embarrassment to the service. Sofia's response to these events was to formally request a change of military occupation specialty from automotive maintenance to general logistics, effectively abandoning the technical expertise that had defined her entire adult life. She also requested assignment to positions that would minimize her visibility and allow her to serve out her remaining military obligation without drawing attention to her previous role in the Wolverine program. The transformation from gunnery. Sergeant Sofia Martinez, rising star of military automotive technology, to Sofia Reyes, anonymous maintenance technician, required more than just administrative changes. Sofia legally changed her surname back to her mother's maiden name, relocated to base housing where she was unknown to her neighbors, and systematically removed all evidence of her previous achievements from her personal life. She destroyed photos from her previous assignments, disposed of awards and commendations that connected her to her former identity, and severed relationships with colleagues who might inadvertently reveal her background. The process of erasing her past was methodical and complete, creating the foundation for 12 years of anonymity that would end only when circumstances forced her to choose between maintaining her cover and using her expertise to save lives. 12 years that followed Sofia's transformation from decorated specialist to anonymous technician represented a masterclass in psychological survival and professional reinvention. Every aspect of her daily existence required careful calibration to maintain the fiction of mediocrity while preserving the technical skills that defined her true identity. The mental discipline required for this sustained deception was exhausting, creating a form of chronic stress that affected her physical health, emotional well-being, and relationship with the Marine Corps that had once been the center of her professional life. Her first months at Camp Pendleton were particularly challenging as she learned to navigate the complex social dynamics of her new unit, while suppressing 12 years of advanced training and combat experience. The motor pool's hierarchy was based on demonstrated competence and proven reliability, meaning that Sofia had to carefully calibrate her performance to appear capable without revealing the depth of her expertise. Every repair she completed, every problem she diagnosed, and every interaction with supervisors required conscious effort to maintain her assumed identity. The physical workspace itself became a daily reminder of how far she had fallen from her previous status. Instead of working with cutting-edge prototype vehicles worth millions of dollars, Sofia found herself performing oil changes on aging Humvees and replacing brake pads on cargo trucks that had been in service for decades. The contrast between her current assignments and her previous responsibilities was stark, but she approached each mundane task with the same methodical precision that had once been applied to revolutionary military technologies. Her living situation reflected the same dramatic change in circumstances. Sofia's previous assignments had provided access to officer quarters, private dining facilities, and recreational amenities that reflected her status within the military hierarchy. Now she lived in standard enlisted housing, ate in crowded dining facilities, and had access only to basic recreational programs designed for junior Marines. The downgrade in living conditions was a constant reminder of what she had lost, but it also reinforced her anonymity within the base's social structure. The financial implications of her career change were significant and ongoing. As a gunnery sergeant with specialized skills and classified assignments, Sofia had earned substantial hazardous duty pay, special assignment bonuses, and other compensation that reflected her value to the Marine Corps. Her current salary as a mid-level maintenance technician was less than half of her previous income, forcing her to adjust her lifestyle and abandon financial goals that had seemed achievable during her rising career. More challenging than the financial adjustment was the intellectual stagnation that came with performing routine maintenance, tasks that required only a fraction of her capabilities. Sofia's mind had been trained to solve complex technical problems, integrate multiple systems, and develop innovative solutions to unprecedented challenges. Now she spent her days following established procedures for simple repairs that she could complete with her eyes closed, creating a sense of intellectual imprisonment that was difficult to endure. The emotional isolation was perhaps the most difficult aspect of her self-imposed exile. Sofia had previously been part of an elite community of technical specialists who shared her passion for automotive innovation and understood the challenges of working with advanced military systems. Her colleagues had been intellectual peers who respected her expertise and valued her contributions to their shared mission. Now she worked alongside Marines who were competent but uninspiring, performing tasks that offered no opportunity for the kind of technical collaboration that had once energized her professional life. Her relationship with the military hierarchy had been fundamentally altered by the investigation and its aftermath. Sofia had once been someone whose opinions were sought by senior officers, whose recommendations influenced major procurement decisions, and whose innovations were implemented throughout the Marine Corps. Now she was just another enlisted Marine whose suggestions were rarely solicited, and whose expertise was largely invisible to the command structure. The psychological adjustment from being valued to being overlooked required constant effort to maintain her emotional equilibrium. The guilt associated with Major Hendricks and Captain Rodriguez's injuries created an additional layer of psychological burden that affected Sofia's daily life in subtle but persistent ways. She found herself checking news reports for updates on their medical conditions, researching treatment options for their injuries, and wondering whether different decisions on her part could have prevented their suffering. The knowledge that her warnings had been ignored haunted her, creating a sense of responsibility that was both irrational and inescapable. Her coping mechanisms evolved over time as she learned to find satisfaction in small accomplishments and meaning in service that went unrecognized. Sofia developed a personal philosophy that emphasized the dignity of honest work, regardless of its visibility or prestige. She took pride in the reliability of vehicles she maintained, knowing that her attention to detail contributed to mission success even if no one recognized her specific contributions. She found purpose in helping younger Marines develop their technical skills, providing guidance and mentorship that drew on her extensive experience without revealing its full scope. The secrecy required to maintain her cover story affected every aspect of her social life, making it difficult to form genuine relationships with colleagues who knew only her carefully constructed persona. Sofia had to constantly monitor her conversations for potential slip-ups, avoiding topics that might reveal her background and deflecting questions about her experience and qualifications. The mental energy required for this constant vigilance was exhausting and contributed to her preference for solitude over social interaction. Her personal interests and hobbies were constrained by the need to avoid activities that might reveal her true capabilities or background. Sofia couldn't participate in technical discussions that showcased her advanced knowledge, couldn't volunteer for challenging assignments that would demonstrate her competence, and couldn't pursue educational opportunities that would be inconsistent with her assumed identity. The intellectual stimulation she craved had to be satisfied through private study and personal projects that remained hidden from her colleagues. The physical demands of maintaining her technical skills without official recognition required significant personal investment in equipment and training materials. Sofia spent substantial portions of her reduced income on specialized tools, diagnostic equipment, and technical publications that she studied in private to stay current with automotive developments. Her apartment's spare bedroom became a secret workshop where she could maintain proficiency with advanced systems and satisfy her need for intellectual challenge. Her relationship with the broader Marine Corps community was complicated by her hidden status as someone who had once been at the forefront of military automotive development. Sofia regularly encountered policies and procedures that she had helped develop, saw implementations of technologies that incorporated her innovations, and observed problems that she could have solved if her expertise had been available. The disconnect between her knowledge and her official role created a constant sense of frustration that she had to carefully conceal. The medical and psychological toll of sustaining this double life accumulated gradually over 12 years of suppressed identity and unrealized potential. Sofia developed chronic tension headaches from the constant stress of monitoring her behavior and conversations. She experienced periodic episodes of depression related to the loss of professional identity and purpose. Her sleep patterns were disrupted by anxiety about maintaining her cover and concerns about the consequences of discovery. Her social relationships outside the Marine Corps were similarly constrained by the need to maintain consistency between her official identity and her interactions with civilian friends and romantic interests. Sofia had to avoid situations where her technical knowledge might be revealed, deflect questions about her military service, and present herself as someone with limited experience and modest aspirations. The exhaustion of maintaining multiple false identities made it difficult to sustain meaningful personal relationships. The approaching crisis represented both her greatest fear and her deepest desire, a situation that would force her to choose between the anonymity she had carefully constructed and the expertise that defined her true self. For 12 years, she had successfully avoided moments that would require such choices. But the desperate radio calls from stranded Marines suggested that her time in hiding was about to end in the most dramatic and irreversible way possible. Psychological preparation for this moment had been building subconsciously throughout her years of exile. As Sofia maintained her technical skills and emotional readiness for the day when circumstances would make concealment impossible and force her to reclaim the identity she had spent more than a decade suppressing, the crisis that would shatter Sofia's carefully maintained anonymity began at 0347 hours Pacific Time when a Marine Reconnaissance patrol operating near the Syrian-Iraqi border reported multiple vehicle failures during what should have been a routine supply convoy mission. The patrol, designated Bravo Team, consisted of 18 Marines traveling in 3 heavily armored Humvees equipped with the latest electronic warfare countermeasures and communication systems. Their mission was to deliver critical medical supplies and encrypted communication equipment to a forward operating base that had been cut off from regular supply routes due to increased insurgent activity in the region. The first indication of trouble came when Staff Sergeant Michael Torres, Bravo Team's leader, reported intermittent electrical problems in the lead vehicle. The symptoms were subtle initially: flickering dashboard displays, occasional communication dropouts, and minor irregularities in the engine management system that could have been attributed to the harsh operating environment or normal wear and tear. However, within minutes of the first report, all 3 vehicles began experiencing similar problems that escalated rapidly from minor annoyances to mission-threatening system failures. The convoy had been traveling through a particularly dangerous section of terrain, known for improvised explosive devices and ambush attacks when the vehicle failures reached critical levels. The lead Humvee's engine management system began experiencing random shutdowns that left the vehicle dead in the road for periods ranging from 30 seconds to several minutes. The second vehicle's electrical system was failing in ways that disabled both its defensive systems and its ability to communicate with other units. The third vehicle was experiencing transmission problems that limited its speed and made it vulnerable to attack if the convoy needed to retreat quickly. Staff Sergeant Torres made the tactically sound decision to establish a defensive perimeter in a location that offered some protection from small arms fire while his Marines attempted to diagnose and repair the vehicle problems. However, their position was temporary at best, and intelligence reports indicated that insurgent forces in the area were actively monitoring coalition communications and would likely respond to any prolonged vehicle breakdown with coordinated attacks designed to capture Marines and their equipment. The technical challenges facing Bravo Team were beyond anything covered in standard maintenance training. The vehicle failures appeared to be related to sophisticated electronic warfare, attacks that were designed to disable military systems without causing obvious physical damage. The symptoms suggested that enemy forces were using directed electromagnetic pulse weapons or advanced jamming systems to disrupt the complex electronic networks that controlled modern military vehicles. Corporal Lisa Chun, Bravo Team's designated mechanic, had extensive training in routine maintenance and repair procedures, but the problems they were experiencing required diagnostic capabilities and technical knowledge that exceeded her educational background and field experience. Her attempts to troubleshoot the electrical systems using standard procedures had been unsuccessful, and the diagnostic equipment available to the patrol was designed for conventional mechanical problems rather than the sophisticated electronic warfare threats they appeared to be facing. The situation became increasingly desperate as intelligence reports confirmed that enemy forces were moving toward their position. Radio intercepts indicated that insurgent commanders were coordinating a multi-pronged attack designed to overwhelm the stranded patrol before backup forces could arrive. The Marines had perhaps 2 hours before they would be facing organized assault from numerically superior forces equipped with heavy weapons and intimate knowledge of the local terrain. Back at Camp Pendleton, the Emergency Operations Center had become a scene of controlled chaos as officers and enlisted personnel worked frantically to identify resources that could assist the stranded patrol. Master Sergeant Rodriguez had immediately contacted every available mechanic and technical specialist on the base, but the consensus was unanimous: the problems Bravo Team was experiencing required expertise with advanced electronic warfare countermeasures that wasn't available. At the base level, the nearest technical specialists with the required knowledge were stationed at bases in Germany and Japan, making it impossible to provide direct assistance within the time constraints imposed by the tactical situation. Even if transportation had been available, the specialized equipment needed to diagnose and repair electromagnetic pulse damage wasn't portable enough to be deployed to a forward position under combat conditions. Colonel Patricia Hayes, the base commander responsible for coordinating the rescue effort, had exhausted every conventional option for providing technical assistance to the stranded Marines. The Marine Corps' Technical Support Network, which was designed to handle routine maintenance and standard repair challenges, simply didn't include personnel with the specialized knowledge required to address sophisticated electronic warfare. Attacks against military vehicle systems. The aviation assets available at Camp Pendleton could potentially extract the Marines if their vehicles couldn't be repaired. But the tactical situation made helicopter operations extremely dangerous. The area where Bravo Team was stranded was known for effective surface-to-air missile systems, and insurgent forces had demonstrated the capability to coordinate anti-aircraft operations with ground attacks, designed to maximize coalition casualties. Furthermore, extracting the Marines would mean abandoning 3 heavily armored vehicles loaded with sophisticated military equipment that insurgent forces would certainly capture and exploit. The vehicles contained classified communication systems, electronic warfare countermeasures, and advanced weapons systems that represented significant intelligence value to enemy forces. Allowing such equipment to fall into hostile hands would compromise ongoing operations throughout the region and potentially endanger other Marine units. The time pressure was relentless and unforgiving. Every minute that passed without a solution increased the likelihood that Bravo Team would face coordinated attack from forces that outnumbered them and possessed superior knowledge of the local terrain. The Marines' defensive position offered some protection, but it wasn't sustainable against the kind of sustained assault that intelligence reports suggested was being organized against them. As the crisis deepened, increasingly desperate suggestions were being considered and rejected. In rapid succession, someone proposed attempting to contact civilian contractors with specialized automotive expertise, but the security implications of involving non-military personnel in a classified operation made this option impractical. Another suggestion involved coordinating with allied forces who might have technical specialists available, but communication delays and classification restrictions made this approach equally problematic. The operations center's communication systems crackled with updates from multiple sources as the situation continued to deteriorate. Intelligence analysts provided increasingly alarming reports about enemy force movements toward Bravo Team's position. Weather specialists confirmed that atmospheric conditions would make air support operations difficult and potentially ineffective. Logistics coordinators reported that ground reinforcements were at least 6 hours away from reaching the stranded patrol. It was during this crescendo of desperation and failed solutions that Sofia Reyes made the decision that would end 12 years of carefully maintained anonymity and reveal capabilities that she had spent more than a decade concealing from everyone around her. Standing in the back corner of the motor pool where she had been performing routine diagnostic work on an unrelated vehicle, Sofia had been monitoring the emergency communications and understood the technical challenges better than anyone else. In the room, the electromagnetic pulse damage that was disabling Bravo Team's vehicles was exactly the type of problem she had encountered during her classified work with Project Wolverine. The symptoms being described over the radio-matched patterns she had seen during testing of vehicles exposed to directed energy weapons and sophisticated jamming systems. More importantly, she knew the repair procedures and diagnostic techniques that could restore functionality to the damaged systems. The decision to reveal herself wasn't made impulsively or without consideration of the consequences. Sofia understood that stepping forward would destroy the anonymity she had spent 12 years building and would expose her to scrutiny that might reveal the full scope of her background and capabilities. However, she also understood that 18 Marines were going to die or be captured if someone with her specific expertise didn't act immediately. Her knowledge of electromagnetic pulse effects on military vehicle systems was based on classified research and field experience that hadn't been shared with conventional maintenance personnel. The repair techniques required to address such damage involved procedures that weren't documented in standard technical manuals and required access to specialized equipment that most mechanics wouldn't know how to use effectively. Sofia's expertise with these systems was unique within the Marine Corps and potentially within the entire military automotive community. The combination of theoretical knowledge and practical experience that she possessed had been developed during years of classified work that had remained highly restricted even after the Wolverine program's termination. Her decision to reveal this expertise would necessarily expose her involvement in classified programs and raise questions about her background that she had spent 12 years avoiding. The moment of decision arrived when Master Sergeant Rodriguez announced to the motor pool that they were out of conventional options and that Bravo team was facing almost certain capture or death unless someone could develop an immediate solution to their vehicle problems. Sofia stepped forward from her corner workspace, set down her tools, and spoke the words that would change everything. "Sergeant, I can fix those vehicles." The silence that followed Sofia's declaration stretched for what felt like an eternity, though it lasted only seconds. Master Sergeant Rodriguez turned from the radio console, his weathered face showing a mixture of desperation and disbelief as he processed what the quiet maintenance technician had just claimed. Around the motor pool, conversation stopped mid-sentence, as Marines who had worked alongside Sofia for years tried to reconcile her typically modest demeanor with the confidence she had just displayed in the face of an impossible technical challenge. "Reyes," Rodriguez said slowly, his voice carrying both hope and skepticism, "those vehicles are experiencing sophisticated electronic warfare damage that's beyond standard maintenance procedures. This isn't a routine repair job." His tone was respectful but firm, reflecting his assumption that Sofia didn't fully understand the complexity of the situation Bravo team was facing. Sofia met his gaze directly for the first time in years, her voice steady and professional as she responded. "Sergeant, the symptoms they're describing are consistent with directed electromagnetic pulse damage to the vehicle's electronic control modules. The primary effects would be in the engine management systems, transmission controls, and communication interfaces. The repair requires bypassing damaged circuits, recalibrating sensor arrays, and implementing hardened communication protocols that can operate in a contested electromagnetic environment." The technical precision of her response sent a ripple of surprise through the motor pool. These weren't terms that routine maintenance technicians typically used, and the specific knowledge she was demonstrating suggested familiarity with classified electronic warfare systems that shouldn't have been accessible to someone in her position. Staff Sergeant Thompson moved closer, his expression shifting from casual interest to intense scrutiny as he tried to understand how Sofia possessed such detailed knowledge. Rodriguez exchanged glances with Lieutenant Morrison, who had been coordinating communications with the operations center. Morrison's expression reflected the same confusion that was spreading through the room as they processed the implications of Sofia's unexpected expertise. The lieutenant stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of his rank, but also a note of uncertainty about the situation he was confronting. "Reyes, can you explain how you're familiar with these systems and procedures?" Morrison's question was professional but pointed, reflecting his responsibility to verify Sofia's qualifications before recommending her for such a critical mission. "The problems Bravo team is experiencing require specialized knowledge that isn't part of standard maintenance training curricula." Sofia's response would determine whether she maintained her carefully constructed anonymity or revealed capabilities that would forever change how her colleagues perceived her. She could still deflect the question, suggest that she had read about similar problems in technical publications, and retreat back to the safety of her assumed mediocrity. Alternatively, she could acknowledge expertise that would invite scrutiny she had avoided for 12 years, but might save 18 Marines' lives. The radio crackled with another update from Bravo Team. Staff Sergeant Torres' voice tense with controlled urgency as he reported that enemy forces were now visible in the distance and appeared to be establishing positions for a coordinated attack. The time available for repairs was shrinking rapidly, and every minute spent on verification procedures reduced the chances that any technical solution could be implemented before the tactical situation became critical. "Lieutenant," Sofia said, her voice carrying a tone of authority that none of her colleagues had ever heard before. "My background includes extensive experience with electronic warfare countermeasures and military vehicle systems that operate in contested, electromagnetic environments. I understand the classification issues this raises, but those Marines don't have time for a complete background verification. They need someone who can guide their mechanic through repair procedures that aren't documented in standard manuals." The transformation in Sofia's demeanor was striking and immediate. Her typically deferential posture had been replaced by the confident bearing of someone accustomed to making critical decisions under pressure. Her voice carried the crisp professionalism of a technical expert who understood complex systems and wasn't intimidated by challenging problems. Most significantly, she was speaking with the assumption that her recommendations would be taken seriously rather than questioned or dismissed. Master Sergeant Rodriguez had spent enough years in the Marine Corps to recognize competence when he encountered it, regardless of its source or apparent inconsistencies with official records. The urgency of the situation demanded practical decisions rather than bureaucratic procedures, and Sofia's technical knowledge appeared to be exactly what Bravo Team needed. However, recommending her for such a critical mission would require accepting responsibility for the consequences if her confidence proved to be misplaced. "Reyes," Rodriguez said, his decision crystallizing as another urgent radio update arrived from the stranded patrol. "If you can help those Marines, I'm authorizing you to coordinate directly with their mechanic. But understand that if this goes wrong, both of our careers are finished." His statement was both permission and warning, acknowledging the irregular nature of the situation while accepting the risks associated with trusting Sofia's unexpected expertise. Sofia nodded once, her expression serious but determined as she moved toward the radio console. "Sergeant, I'll need direct communication with Corporal Chun and access to the detailed diagnostic reports from all 3 vehicles. I'll also need someone to coordinate with the supply depot to ensure we have the specific components and tools that will be required for the repairs." Her immediate transition into technical leadership surprised everyone in the motor pool, but the competence she displayed was undeniable. Sofia began issuing specific instructions with the confidence of someone who had managed similar crises many times before, demonstrating organizational skills and technical knowledge that exceeded anything her colleagues had previously observed. "Shun, this is Camp Pendleton Technical Support." Sofia's voice carried clearly through the radio as she established communication with Bravo Team's mechanic. "I need you to access the primary diagnostic port on each vehicle and provide me with the specific error codes from the engine management and transmission control modules. The port locations vary by vehicle configuration, but they should be marked with yellow diagnostic labels." Corporal Chun's response revealed both relief at receiving expert assistance and confusion about the unexpected source of that expertise. "Technical support, I'm not familiar with accessing diagnostic ports for electromagnetic pulse damage. Can you provide more specific guidance about the procedures you want me to follow?" Sofia's response demonstrated the depth of her knowledge, as she provided step-by-step instructions for accessing diagnostic systems that weren't covered in standard maintenance training. Her guidance was precise, technically accurate, and delivered with the patient confidence of someone who understood exactly what needed to be accomplished. She walked Chun through complex procedures as if she had performed them countless times before, which she had. The diagnostic sequence will reveal which specific circuits have been damaged by the electromagnetic pulse, Sofia explained as Chun worked through her instructions. The good news is that these systems have backup pathways that can be activated manually if you know the correct procedures. The challenge is that the activation sequences aren't documented in field manuals because they're considered classified countermeasures. The implications of Sofia's statement weren't lost on the Marines listening to the conversation. She was claiming knowledge of classified procedures that shouldn't have been available to someone in her position, and she was discussing technical concepts that suggested extensive experience with electronic warfare systems. The questions about her background were multiplying, but the immediate priority was using her expertise to save the stranded patrol. As Sofia continued guiding Chun through increasingly complex diagnostic and repair procedures, her colleagues began recognizing that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The quiet, unassuming maintenance technician who had worked invisibly among them for years was demonstrating expertise that exceeded anything they had encountered in their military careers. Her knowledge was comprehensive, her instructions were precise, and her confidence was absolute. Chun, you should now be seeing system status displays that show which backup circuits are available, Sofia continued, her voice steady despite the pressure of the situation. The electromagnetic pulse damage typically affects primary circuits while leaving secondary pathways functional. Your job is to reconfigure the vehicle systems to use those backup pathways, essentially creating a hardened communication and control network that can operate despite the electronic warfare environment. The repair process she was describing would normally require specialized technicians with advanced training and classified clearances, yet Sofia was guiding a field mechanic through procedures that she clearly understood in extraordinary detail. Her colleagues exchanged glances that reflected growing amazement at the transformation they were witnessing, but their focus remained on the radio communications that would determine whether 18 Marines lived or died. The revelation of Sofia's true capabilities was now complete and irreversible, forever changing how everyone around her understood her background, her qualifications, and her reasons for maintaining such extraordinary anonymity for so many years. Within 47 minutes, all 3 vehicles were operational. Sofia's guidance had transformed what seemed like an impossible repair into a systematic restoration of combat capability. Corporal Chun's voice crackled through the radio with barely contained excitement as she reported successful engine starts, restored communications, and fully functional defensive systems. Technical support. All vehicles are green across the board. I don't know who you are, but you just saved 18 lives. Chun transmitted as Bravo team prepared for immediate extraction. From their compromised position, Master Sergeant Rodriguez stared at Sofia with a mixture of awe and confusion. Reyes, or whoever you really are, that was the most impressive technical performance I've witnessed in 23 years of service. Those procedures you just described, where the hell did you learn them? Sofia's response was quiet but dignified. Sergeant, sometimes the best way to serve is to be ready when nobody expects it. I was Staff Sergeant Sofia Martinez, Project Wolverine, Electronic Warfare Countermeasures Specialist. I've been hiding for 12 years because of mistakes that cost good Marines their health and nearly their lives. The motor pool fell silent as the implications sank in. Sofia continued, I requested this assignment because I knew someday Marines would need skills that only I possessed. Today was that day. Lieutenant Morrison stepped forward. Martinez, the Marine Corps needs specialists like you. Will you consider returning to your original specialty? Sofia shook her head. Sir, I prefer my current position. But now you know, when the impossible happens, I'll be ready. 2 weeks later, a worn flight helmet appeared on Sofia's workstation with a note. Ghost Tech, the Corps remembers. Want to hear more incredible stories of hidden heroes and unexpected courage? These stories of ordinary people with extraordinary secrets happen more often than you think. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. You never know when someone around you might be hiding capabilities that could change everything. What's the most surprising talent someone you know has revealed? Share your stories in the comments below.